Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stand on the protocols that have been observed already. I was trying to find my 20-page speech, but it looks like the dog ate it this morning, so I think that you've survived my 20-page speech. However, what I'd like to say first and foremost is that I would like to thank you for your patience. It's been a long day. I thought I heard the cocks crowing, but I think it was my mind playing with me. However, we're almost getting there, and we truly thank you for, showing up and staying for this long. But it's been an amazing day, hasn't it? Poignant but celebratory, in honor of a giant, of a man, and that's literally and figuratively. Having had the honor of working with Professor Oramah for the last 17 years, it's particularly meaningful to me that I've been chairperson of the organizing committee of all the events related to the bank's presidential transition. The committee that I've worked with has been working actively on this since July of this year. And for that reason, I would like, in front of all of you, to say my sincere thanks to all the committee and subcommittee members that I've worked with to make today's event happen, and also for the event that we're going to celebrate tomorrow. The committee has worked very closely with other third-party service providers, including our dear MC, Mark Edo, Brandcoms, and all the others that I'm unable to list right now. So please allow me to ask you to give a round of applause to them for that as well. Finally, with the deepest humility that I can muster, it is my utmost pleasure to invite the man of the moment, Professor Benedict Okechukwu Oramah, aka Dikora, to come and address us. Please rise and welcome him to the stage with a round of applause. Please rise and welcome him to stage.
Your Excellency, the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, dear brother Tadru, Your Excellencies, former President, Excellencies, former Vice President, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, Secretary General of the AFCFJ Secretariat, Excellencies, Ambassadors, Honorable Ministers, former Presidents of Afreximbank, members of the Board of Directors of Afreximbank and the subsidiaries of Afreximbank, the Chairperson of the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, and other members of this AMFI, the executives of Afreximbank, incoming president of Afreximbank, distinguished my dear wife and my dear daughters, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It has been a long and reflective day all of us. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time from your busy schedules to participate in the historic events of this weekend. I must thank all those colleagues, friends, and partners who said very kind words about me today. So thank former and current Afreximbank board and staff members, shareholders, officials of partner institutions, clients, and others who made significant contributions to the success of this conference. In October 1993, I attended the first Afreximbank annual meeting in Abuja, Nigeria, as a member of staff of Nigerian Export-Import Bank. I listened with rapt attention as the late visionary African leader, Dr. Babakar Ndiaye, the former president of African Development Bank, articulated a compelling Pan-African vision, which he and his colleagues had converted to reality on that day in the form of Afreximbank. 2 months later, in December 1993, I accompanied the pioneer president of Afreximbank and our then managing director at Nexim Bank, Christopher Dodo, to Cairo, where he was inaugurated president in a simple ceremony in a small room in the Intercontinental Hotel in Garden City, not too far from here. The inaugural address brought the aspirations espoused in Dr. Ndiaye's visionary speech to an implementable plan that strengthened the already compelling case for an Afreximbank. It was little wonder then that almost a year later, in September 1994, I had the unique privilege of joining the bank as one of its pioneer staff members. In September 2015, after 21 years of service, I had the privilege of being appointed the president of the bank. And today, after 31 years, I stand before you to deliver remarks for the last time as president of the bank. You will agree with me, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that it has been a remarkable journey. When I joined the bank, I knew that I was not joining just another financial institution. I was becoming part of a movement aimed at turning decades-old aspirations of Africans into reality. Although I wasn't the most experienced when I came on board, I took up my responsibilities with great enthusiasm, eager to learn, in full belief that fate had placed me, the bank, and the continent on this path together. Upon assuming office as president of the bank in September 2015, I outlined an agenda for my presidency. At that time, it seemed quite ambitious, even an overreach for many. However, given the significant challenges facing our continent, including a resurgence of the commodity crisis reminiscent of the 1980s, a waning hope for industrial transformation, and regression in trade and economic integration, I have thought that we could not afford to be lethargic. I was convinced that after 21 years of solid operations, it was time for the bank to more robustly take on the key purposes of its establishment. I thought that the bank had become of age to begin to ask important questions. This will require being bold and courageous in crafting a comprehensive trade development vision and strategy to constructively disrupt the status quo as a prerequisite to achieving Africa's development. We need that for structural transformation to occur, incumbents must fall. But we also knew that incumbents would not fall easily. So if we chose to engage, we must have the courage to fight. We must have the determination, skills, and patience to see that fight through. Our philosophy was born out of conviction that the only viable path forward for Africa's development and economic emancipation was one that would aggressively reverse engineer the colonial strategy of divide and rule and divide and conquer that had for decades pinned Africa and people of African descent down in the dustbin of despair and desperation. Accordingly, our philosophy was that Africa's development dynamo must be powered from within, as hundreds of years of history had shown us that external interests had been mostly predatory and parasitic, unless engaged from a position of strength and purpose. That was why we made the promotion of intra-African trade and investments the arrowhead of our strategy. When we announced that strategy in 2016, many who did not understand the nature and scope of what needed fixing accused us of taking on too many things, and some predicted colossal failure. But as good strategists who spent enormous amounts of time debating ideas, a culture that was handed over to us by the pioneer president, Mr. Dodu, we always knew that our choices were comprehensive and internally consistent. We knew that we had to fight on all fronts, as intra-African trade promotion was until then only a subject of nostalgia with no action. To those who argued that we should focus on trade finance only, I hope they now have their answers as to why that would have failed. And I ask, what trade would have been financed if there were no capacity to produce the goods that will enter the trade? Who would have traded in volumes to merit trade finance if we did not address the institutional failure caused by the absence of export trading companies, which drove the rampant informal intra-African trade? What trade would have been financed if there were no harmonized standards and if there were no testing and certification infrastructure that would reduce the very high non-tariff barriers that block intra-regional trade? Who will venture into intra-African trade if there was no trade information? No trader trades in the dark. Who have committed to deliver goods across African borders when there was very limited infrastructure to carry the goods? How could trade volumes rise to warrant trade financing when the poor intra-African and high extra-African trade compete for the same US dollars? Why would any trader bother to move goods across African borders when at each of Africa's 110 borders, transit guarantees have to be posted before the goods can cross? Which African supplier will have accepted a letter of credit opened by another African bank when there were no international banks to add confirmation to letters of credit? How would intra-African trade in creative and cultural goods have occurred if there was no one promoting them? How would intra-African trade amongst Africans in Africa, the Caribbean, and the wider diaspora have occurred if there was no deliberate effort to push them? Need I explain any further why we had to fight on all fronts? Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that because we fought on all fronts, we can point to tangible differences the bank has made. We can now point to those things that now exist, those new institutional arrangements and interventions that have now joined as formidable forces in Africa's armory in its fight towards true self-determination. Those things that we look up to today, many of which were mere hopes and aspirations 10 years ago. For instance, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement implementation is ahead of schedule, thanks, as you've heard from the Secretary General, to Afreximbank support. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which is backed by Afreximbank's $3 billion clearing and settlement facility, is today operational in 20 countries and counting. After more than 60 years of political independence, we are finally on the verge of integrating the continent's 42 payment systems into a single payment rail. And finally, we have made African currencies legal tenders across African borders. The FCFTA Adjustment Fund, aimed at supporting FCFTA participating states to adjust in an orderly manner to the new trading regime, is today a reality, thanks to the partnership between the FCFTA Secretariat and Afreximbank, as well as the bank's $1 billion commitment to support the fund. We are addressing the lack of trade information by launching and implementing the Intra-African Trade Fair, which has held 4 times so far, attracting over $170 billion in trade and investment deals and 180,000 visitors. Our digital platform, the Africa Trade Gateway, uses digital technology to break down information barriers, while our Afreximbank Africa Trade Centers, which have sprung up across the continent, provide solid platforms for intra-African trade and investment information. About 700 standards for pharmaceuticals and medical equipment, agriculture, automobiles, textiles, and so on have been harmonized, enabling smoother intra-African trade. We are building testing and certification centers across Africa to ensure that there is infrastructure to implement the standards we have helped to harmonize. Working with the AFCFTA Secretariat and COMESA, we have launched the Africa Collaborative Transit Guarantee Scheme, supported by $1 billion in guarantee limits from Afreximbank. So today, and one day, it will be possible for goods to move from Cape to Cairo with just one transit bond. With Afreximbank's support, industrial parks and special economic zones are springing up like mushrooms across Africa, creating manufactured exports where none existed. We have worked with Arise integrated industrial platforms to build out industrial parks, helping to process goods that used to leave Africa as mere commodities. We have supported the emergence of heavy industries, such as the Dangote refinery and petrochemical plant, which are exporting not only within Africa, but internationally. Thanks to our work in the past few years, social, cultural, and economic ties with the CARICOM and the broader Africa diaspora have been ignited. Through our Africa Medical Center of Excellence, we have paved the way for quality healthcare to become accessible to many Africans. Getting proper healthcare will soon be a right and no longer a privilege on the continent. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when Africa was left to fend for itself, we rose to the challenge, disbursing over $10 billion in the COVID-19 containment intervention. We also put up $2 billion that enabled Africa and the Caribbean to procure the COVID-19 vaccines when nobody was there to support Africa. Sometimes I wonder what the African Union would have done if there was no Afreximbank. While doing all of this, we still kept a sharp focus on institutional strength and financial health, and grew the balance sheet and guarantees almost eightfold, from $6 billion in September 2015 to almost $44 billion in September 2025. We grew revenues and net income equally and paid out an aggregate of almost $1.4 billion to shareholders as dividends for the same period. So investing in the bank yields two types of dividends: the development dividend we all want, and the dividends that those who invest can put in their pockets. Notwithstanding the foregoing highlights, I do not need to reiterate the eloquent presentations made by my current and former colleagues and the esteemed guest speakers throughout the day. Those presentations, along with the report card I presented at the 32nd annual meetings in Abuja last June, summarize our collective progress and achievements over the last 3 decades, particularly in the past 10 years. We could not have accomplished any of this without the extraordinary support from many of you gathered here today, and even those who are not here, who are from different places. Your support has been instrumental in elevating the bank to the current stature. So a key purpose of my speech this evening is therefore to say thank you to you all for giving me immense opportunities, tolerating my weaknesses, giving me the benefit of the doubt, and helping me to rise to my full potential. While recognizing that the debt of gratitude I owe is immense, please permit me to cite a few examples. My postgraduate studies at Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife, Nigeria, introduced me to a remarkable man who will have a profound impact on my life. I would like to pay special tribute to Professor Deniyi Osuntogu, who took me under his wings and instilled in me the values that have become the foundations and guiding principles of my life's journey. As we heard from President Dodu, he identified an opportunity at the Nigerian Export-Import Bank, deemed me worthy of the challenge, and introduced me to President Dodu, who was then the managing director. That single decision changed my life's trajectory. The future of a family, a community, an institution, and even a continent can often hinge on the simple acts of kindness and decisions made by those we encounter along our paths. Professor Shutogu, your choice in 1992 to introduce me to Mr. Dodu opened me to this opportunity, the fruits of which we celebrate today. So for everything you've done for me, for Afreximbank, I say thank you, Prof. Special thanks to Mr. Christopher Dodu, pioneer president of Afreximbank, who, despite having closed interviews for a position at Nexim, still gave me a chance to prove myself. He provided me with the opportunity to explore uncharted waters at the early stages of Afreximbank in Cairo, mentored and challenged me at an intense pace, for which I am particularly thankful, because those days prepared me for subsequent work in Afreximbank. I also had a unique opportunity of working under the insightful and solid banker, Mr. Jean-Louis Ekra. As his executive vice president for business development and corporate banking, I collaborated closely with him to define the strategic direction of the bank. During the shareholder crisis that shook the bank to its very foundations, he instilled confidence in all of us and entrusted me with responsibilities that I believe prepared me for the presidency of the bank later. Thank you very much, sir, for your trust and confidence. I would like to extend our utmost gratitude to the former and current leadership of the African Union Commission for the strong partnership we developed over the past decade. The partnership and support were instrumental in the delivery of many impactful Pan-African projects and initiatives we pursued. I would like to pay special tribute to His Excellency Ambassador Muchanga, the former Commissioner for Economic Development, Trade, Industry and Mining at the African Union Commission, for his pioneering work and steadfast advocacy for the bank within the African Union Commission. Special thanks to the current chairperson, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, and his deputy, dear sister who is here with us, Her Excellency Salma Malika, Haddadi, as well as the preceding chair, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, and his able deputy also, Her Excellency Dr. Monique Zanzabagiwa, for being strong advocates for the bank. As an intra-African trade bank, Afreximbank naturally found a partner in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat under the indefatigable leadership by their brother, His Excellency Tawankele Mene. From its inception, the AFCFTA Secretariat has forged an unassailable bond with Afreximbank. Together, we formed an enduring partnership dedicated to building a resilient future for our people. Since 2019, we've collaborated to establish several institutional structures and programs that are just beginning to catalyze intra-African trade and the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Again, the success of that collaboration reflects the power of synergies between policy and development finance institutions. And thank His Excellency Tawankele Mene for his unwavering commitment to our partnership and our shared vision for Africa. Afreximbank has retained and strengthened its partnership with other regional and international organizations towards the delivery of many of its flagship programs and initiatives. We are especially grateful to the International Trade Center under the able leadership of our sister, Ms. Pamela Cook-Hamilton, which helped create and roll out new programs such as the How to Trade under the AFCFTA, designed to build the capacity of African SMEs to trade under the Free Trade Agreement. Our policy and research collaboration with the UN Economic Commission for Africa has been robust. The collaboration was particularly strong during the COVID-19 pandemic, alongside Vera Song with the former Executive Secretary of UNECA and Strive Masiwa, AU champion for COVID-19 logistics. We provided solutions that help mitigate the health and the economic impact of the pandemic. I am very pleased that this strong partnership has continued under the leadership of our brother, Dr. Clever Gatete, with whom we are jointly championing industrialization and climate initiatives. Special thanks are also due to Her Excellency Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Secretary General of the WTO, for her continued support, especially as regards the Cotton 4 project, as well as a joint effort to convince FIFA to procure jerseys from Africa so that we can participate in the $9 billion or so procurement that FIFA makes every year. In the pursuit of advancing intra-African trade, we have relied on strategic partnerships to develop enabling programs. ZEPRI and the Commercial Secretariat have played a crucial role in designing and implementing a collaborative transit guarantee scheme. We are grateful to the leadership of both institutions for their bold vision, which enabled us to realize the aspirations of Africa's 4 leaders. We've also collaborated with African Central Bank governors to roll out the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. And at this juncture, I would like in particular to recognize the role played by the West African Monetary Institute in getting the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System off the ground as they worked with us to start off the pilot project in the West Africa Monetary Zone. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago, we began taking concrete steps towards building Africa's resilience against. We have created a clear and dependent pathway to Africa's industrial transformation. We are making vital investments that are closing the industrial infrastructure gap and catalyzing intra-African and global investments into the continent. We must thank Mr. Aliko Dangote for being a strong partner and a visionary supporter of this initiative. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the successes enumerated earlier wouldn't have been possible if our clients had not considered us worthy of their businesses. We are therefore grateful to all our clients who have become central pillars of transformation in Africa. We are particularly grateful to all 500 banks with whom we have forged strong relationships over the past decade. Major corporates such as the Dangote Group, Esewudi Group, NNPC, Sonangol, and many more for thinking us worthy of their business and supporting us in other ways so that the relationship has become a win-win relationship. The successes achieved over the last decade have been supported by strong and unreserved shareholder backing. More than ever, African governments have shown a strong commitment to empowering the bank to accomplish its mandate. This has been evidenced by successful equity injections even during global economic shocks. The successful diversification of liability sources has also bolstered the bank's resilience. African resources have become one of the most important sources of finance for the bank. And we expect that in the years ahead, the share of Africa in the bank's liability would rise from the current 37% to something close to 50%, because that is where we have set our eyes on. We are grateful to African central banks, African corporates, our partner multilateral development banks, and others for being important supporters and partners of this initiative. We also like to express our gratitude to our traditional funding partners, including international commercial banks, such as Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC, SMBC, as well as development finance institutions such as AFD, China Development Bank, European Investment Bank, KfW, along with several export credit agencies, such as those of Canada, China, India, Finland, Spain, Sweden, Russia, Germany, Japan, Korea, Spain, and so on. These partners have been the backbone of our efforts for the past 31 years. Thanks to your contributions, we are able to attract and disburse over $155 billion over the last decade to support the continent's development. Our clients, public and private sector corporates, as well as financial institutions, have also played a crucial role in our Afreximbank's progress, which we celebrate today. We are grateful for the trust you continue to repose on us. I must also pay special tribute to the African Development Bank under the leadership of Dr. Sidi Ota and the former president and our dear brother, Dr. Adeshino, for their unflinching support for the bank during the last decade. The lines of credit, co-financing, and other technical support provided enabled us to deliver on vital trade-related projects across the continent. Thanks also to our Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institution Partners, including AFC, Africa RE, ATD, Shelter Afrique, ZEPRI, Africa Solidarity Fund, FEDA, Trade and Development Bank, EADB, with whom we have jointly delivered on major development programs I have now forged a bond of partnership to jointly confront our common challenges and pursue common opportunities. As we reflect on the bank's achievements and its lasting impact on the African people, we must recognize the individuals who made the critical decisions and provided the strategic guidance that have shaped the bank's operations over the last 3 decades. I extend my special appreciation to the dedicated current and former members of the Board of Directors of Afreximbank for their commitment and sacrifices in supporting the bank's mission. I must also pay special tribute to the Board of Afreximbank subsidiaries and special initiatives, as well as members of the advisory councils of the Inter-African Trade Fair and the Creative Africa Nexus, for the insights that have enabled us drive the agenda of these entities. I thank you for responding positively to our invitation to serve and contribute your knowledge and experience towards the development and growth of these impactful initiatives. And most in particular, thank His Excellency, former President of Nigeria, Baba Olusegun Obasanjo, for being the engine that drove the success of our inter-African trade initiative, and also being a strong advocate of the bank, not only within the continent, but internationally. Notwithstanding all of this, is essential to recognize that even the most skilled farmer requires the right tools to yield a bumper harvest. In our case, the board, executive management, and I couldn't have done it all by ourselves. Our devoted colleagues, our staff, have been the driving force behind the progress we've made over the past years. Even when faced with the challenges posed by the worst pandemic of the century, they demonstrated resilience and commitment, working tirelessly to help African economies recover and support the implementation of essential trade-enabling projects across the continent. As I made my inaugural speech 10 years ago, I called them co-mandated lead arrangers. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the co-mandated lead arrangers have successfully closed the deal, as we are here joyfully witnessing the deal closing ceremony. Special thanks to our hosts, the people and government of Egypt, under the leadership of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, for their steadfast support for the bank during my tenure. I must say that President Sisi's support for the bank has been exemplary, which has enabled us to receive support all across the board in Egypt, and also using Egypt's influence to support the work of the bank across Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there can never be an exhaustive list of persons and institutions that made an impact on the bank and me personally over the past 10 years. Whether they are event partners or consultants such as BrandComs, who assisted in the design and rollout of vital programs or strategies, or in fine-tuning aspects of our operations, I am eternally grateful to you all. You are part of the success story that many spoke about today. And to my late parents, Lazarus and Francisca, I thank them for making me the African I am. I must also thank my immediate family, my dear wife Chinelo, and my 3 beautiful and resourceful daughters for their patience and resilience over the last 31 years. They have been very understanding, and I hope they will also prove understanding as I've become a homeboy. I also thank my brothers and sisters. 2 of them are here, 1 is not here. Thank them especially because they were part of my upbringing. They were part of preparing me. I also thank in-laws and our larger extended family for their unwavering support. They're always there when I needed them. My friends from across the continent and the world also supported me, sometimes at personal cost to themselves. We are truly indebted to you all. As we look to the future, we must remind ourselves that despite the progress we celebrate today, the challenges of development remain significant. These challenges will intensify for both Africa and the bank as we continue to implement policies, programs, and initiatives that will disrupt embedded inequities. Programs and initiatives that will help the country reduce its economic dependence on others. I'm optimistic about the future of the bank and its impact on Africa and people of African descent, because I have confidence in the new leadership elected by our shareholders to take the bank forward, in the person of my dear brother and colleague, Dr. George Elombi. When he takes the oath of office tomorrow, he will have spent nearly 30 years in the bank, actively participating in a collective effort of using the bank as an important engine for Africa's economic transformation. He is an old hand who knows where the bodies are buried. He knows the risks. He knows how to confront them. He stood with all of us as we confronted threats and navigated them. So he comes well prepared. He steps into the role after years of defending the interests of the bank and Africa. I have no doubt that with him at the helm and with a solid team he will inherit, the achievements in the next 10 years will make those of the past 10 years look so ordinary. I look forward to a vibrant and memorable event tomorrow. Thank you all once again for your time. And please enjoy the concert this evening. And for my colleagues I will be leaving behind, I remind you to always remember your anthem. We will build for Africa's prosperity. We build for the now and posterity. Always remember that is the calling. If you forget, play the anthem. Thank you very much.
The DK Aura, the strong man of the people, Professor Benedict Oramah. Sir, I'm going to ask you to take your flowers. You stand tall as the emperor, the conqueror, the champion, the lion.
The conqueror, the champion, the lion is here.
Dangote, please join us on the stage. Former heads of states, presidents, former VPs, presidents of Afreximbank, our incoming president, please. We can't do without you. Please join us on the stage. Dancing is optional. And spouses, please join us, the spouses of the presidents and past presidents of Afreximbank, Professor Mufti, the deputy chairperson of the African Union, our board members, our executives and our shareholders and our subsidiary heads, representatives from the Caribbean, the governors of the states, join us, ministers, former ministers. Please join us. Let's get some captains of industry. Simon Tiem Torre, we need you on the stage. Gagan Gupta, we need you on the stage. We need our partners on the stage. Ahuna Ezia Konwa UNDP, join us too. We need all our friends and family here. Chinelo, join us on the stage. And Wamkele Mene, SG of the AFCFTA, we can't do without you, and I know you have some great dance moves too.